Thank you for the great questions and lovely comments you made about the Panasonic GH5S video we did last week. Yeah, that one. I haven't actually given the camera back to Panasonic yet, so I thought I'd try and answer just a few of the things we didn't cover last week. Firstly, dynamic range. Lots of questions about DR. Dynamic range. The range of signal amplitudes over which an electronic communications channel can operate within acceptable limits of distortion. Measuring dynamic range accurately is really difficult. You need thousands of pounds worth of calibrated light box, charts, technical measuring gear, all stuff we just don't have. That's why most reviewers you see here just quote manufacturer's figures. Thing is, at the extremes of these measurements, you can get quite subjective. I mean, what's an acceptable level of noise or detail? I've run a few tests of the GH5S against the GH5 at the extremes of exposure, firstly to protect the highlights and then retain the shadows, and the conclusion is, at native ISOs there isn't a great deal of difference in dynamic range between the two cameras. It's about 12 usable stops. But that isn't the full story. Because the S has lower noise at higher ISOs, it feels like there's more dynamic range. There's more usable detail in the shadows. I think we're getting to the stage now where we shouldn't get too bogged down in manufacturers' figures for dynamic range. I mean, look at the original Arri Alexa and my old Sony F5. They both say they have the same dynamic range of 14 stops. Well, that's just silly. The Arri Alexa is way ahead of the Sony. There are lots of tricks it does with gamma curves and saturation levels and dual paths that make it look like it's got much better dynamic range. That's not to say Sony haven't caught up with the Venice. The way that handles highlights is just beautiful. But I digress. The GH5S looks a lot better than the GH5 at the extremes of exposure, simply because it's so clean. The second most asked question was how much faster the GH5S was than the GH5. And rather rashly, I said, It works out that this is about 3.5 stops faster. And I noticed some reviewers I really respect said it's only 1 stop. So what's the true story? Did they actually use the camera? Some people were comparing V-log, which is never a great way to look at low light levels. But even Panasonic say it's only 1.5 stops faster, so something's strange. Luckily, because I've still got the camera, I can show you what I meant. It's night time on the beach again, this time just comparing acceptable noise levels. My maximum on the GH5 is 3200 ISO. Let's compare the noise on the GH5S to that base level. Look at that again. Zoomed in at 400%, GH5 on the left with 3200 and the GH5S on the right with 25,600 ISO. Can you see the difference in noise levels? Okay, the S is slightly noisier, but not by much. My new maximum ISO on the GH5S is now 20,000, and that's 2.5 stops faster than the GH5. So what's going on? Why would Panasonic underrate the performance so much? Maybe I've just got a good one. And finally, one thing we didn't get to mention earlier, which will make sound engineers very happy, the audio input is now switchable to line or mic level. Sounds like a small thing, but it's really useful. So thank you for getting to the end of the update, and for all the questions and comments, it really is appreciated. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more. Unfortunately now, I'm going to have to give this one back.